Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today, we're sitting down with Dustin Ware. He is the owner and lead instructor of Ohio Combat Sports Academy, and he is a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he has also over 20 years of training with a plethora more that we'll get into, I'm sure, as well as being an athletic director at a school. And hey, man, Dustin, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And you and Chad go back. You guys have some history together, right?
Yeah, man, I've known Chad. I mean, it has to be over. God, it was before I opened my school. I opened my school 11 years ago, August of 2010. So probably before that, I can't really put a number on. I mean, I think the very first grappling tournament I ran individually wasn't even called an OGC. Was up at Sheely had done some kind of martial arts tournament, and it was up in, I think, at Akron maybe, and Scott was like, "Hey, we want to do grappling. Can you come up and throw some grappling together?" And I remember they had some like zebra mat, or not even zebra, like puzzle mats in the corner. And I think maybe Chad had a few guys that had come back then, because back then East Coast was more of a karate school, the jiu-jitsu burgeoning at that point. And I think he trained a lot of the with Terry and those guys. A lot of those guys kind of cross trained with you, or
yeah, they cross trained. Tony Sylvester. Those guys. Yeah.
And so, yeah. I mean, that had to be. I mean, that was 2000. I started the OGC in 2006, so that had to be 2005.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm not even sure.
It's been a while. I started jiu-jitsu in 2004, so
yeah.
So that was so 5, 6, somewhere in there.
There.
Yeah, we've known each. I told Terry, he wanted to know how long I known you or how we met, or through jiu-jitsu. And I always say that you're one of my first jiu-jitsu friends out of my East Coast circle.
Right.
That I started talking to a lot and coming to, like, a Wednesday night seminar. Let's go. I'm going to Columbus to see Dustin and George, So I did that.
Yeah, you were always, your group was always one that came down. I've always been a big, always, and always will be a big believer in not shutting off my students from the world of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I was always very open to, that's great, we're a part of this team, but hey, that's really good jiu-jitsu. He has something to teach you. So let's go learn from them, right?
Right.
So I always tried to make sure that no matter what school, whether I was the instructor, the owner, whatever, it was very inclusive, and that anyone that wanted to come and train was always welcome to come and train. And so, Chad and his guys were always willing to make the drive down whenever we hosted seminars, whether it was George or really anyone. I've been very fortunate over the years to host some really incredible seminars here in Columbus. And again, I just think it's because I have a really open mentality. I just think that's how jiu-jitsu should be. It shouldn't be, this tribal, closed off thing. And I think it's becoming more open now. You go back and forth. You have teams that are really, really tribal. I'm only going to train with this group. And then you have people that, like myself, and there's other schools even here in Central Ohio that are really open to cross training. And I think that's great for everybody.
Have you seen that evolve, Dustin, like over time, obviously, just because where jiu-jitsu has come, old school versus new school, and it's kind of evolved in like, hey, it's not a top secret. Like, hey, what I have is secret sauce. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
I would say it's probably multiple layers of that. I think the first one is, and I'll approach it from a couple angles, right? As a business owner, who am I to tell my grown adults who are coming and paying for a service that they shouldn't go somewhere else and also have the opportunity to learn? That's disingenuous for me. If I'm telling them I want to be their professor, I want to be their teacher, I want to be their friend, the person they can count on to help make them improve their jiu-jitsu, but don't look over there. Like, that's disingenuous to me.
Sure, yeah.
I don't like taking that approach. Again, from a business, I think nowadays, because the accessibility to information is so widespread, if someone comes across someone who plays a certain game that's maybe not something you do at your school, they're going to seek that out. So why not support that their desire to get better and improve that part of their game? It doesn't mean they don't respect you as an instructor or don't think they're not happy with your school. So, I think accessibility information is a big one. And I just think the culture, I don't like to say it's become more Americanized, but I do feel the culture has become more laid back as maybe some of the original Brazilians who came here 20 years ago or whatever and still had that really team versus team mentality. I think even their mentality about cross training has definitely evolved, which is just, filtered down through all their American black belts now. I mean, I can remember, I vividly remember I was at the Army year when, it was such a big deal when Dr. Hudson and, he's kind of the OG of Jiu-Jitsu in Ohio, and Steve Maxwell, who a lot of people know, the day they got their black belts, I mean, that was such a huge deal because there were like 4 guys that got their black belts in Ohio. That was huge.
Yeah,
sure, yeah.
It's still a big deal to get your black belt, but I mean, the caliber of training at all of our academies now has continued to grow, and so through exposure, through growth, I just think that kind of tribal mentality, it still probably exists. I also think where you live plays a big part, like where you're at in the country.
Sure.
Probably plays a huge factor into that as well. But so I definitely think it's evolved over the years, though.
Yeah, I think sometimes it turns into a fine line of, I love cross training, obviously, been to your place a lot of times, and, where you got to find where loyalty lies there too, which gets to be a slippery slope sometimes. But
I think proximity is what, it depends on, you're right in that regard. I could say that, like here in Central Ohio, you can kind of go around the Beltway, you go around 270, and we're all kind of in our own little segment around the city.
mm-hmm.
And for the most part, we're all kind of maybe either the same team or kind of same sister team or whatever the case may be. But I think if you're doing your job as an instructor,
right,
and you have good instructors at your academy, and you have good people at your academy, and I think the loyalty thing is really important, but I think it just comes with being honest and true with your students.
For sure.
Not really trying to, I think if you try to, it's like a kid, right? If you try to keep telling a kid, hey, you're not allowed to have that, they're going to want that even more, right?
Absolutely, yep.
So it's like, I think that you can encourage loyalty through openness and honesty with your students and your members. And that's, has that bit me in the past? I mean, probably. I mean, right. I think there's a person that's going to watch this video or a jiu-jitsu instructor, at least in the state of Ohio, that hasn't had a student who at some point in time who they really felt really close to openly decided that it was better for them to go somewhere else. And it stings. I mean, I'm not going to lie, when it happens sometimes, it is a painful experience because, you feel like you invest not just knowledge, because I mean, they might even be better than me now, whatever the case may be, but it's right. Time. We don't get our time back, and we speak with so many of our students, sometimes more than our own family. And, so we don't get that time back. And when someone feels like that their time's being wasted with you and you've committed maybe years of training with these people, that sucks.
It hurts. Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It sucks. And yeah, I think it gets better the older we get. Like it doesn't bother me like it used to. Like I used to really get butthurt about it. Like, man, but like you said, about cross training, they're grown men paying a fee to do, what are you going to do? At the end of the day, you're left with the students that want to be there, and that's who you got to devote your time for. And it might happen again. It might happen all over.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think now that I'm older, I say I'm older. I have guys in my gym that are much older than me. They're in way better shape than me, training half as long as me. And so when I always feel like, oh, I'm old, and then I look over and I've got a student who's like 55 and he's won like 4 Master Worlds. I'm like, all right, I'm not old.
I'm not old.
I'm not old to him, but I feel old. But I'll be 43 soon, and I think as I've gotten older, it doesn't bother me as bad. I don't know if that's because the school's grown and it's like, well, we'll just replace that one. Kind of the approach I've taken. I've learned to, what do I always say, small stuff. Not that it's small stuff, but in the grand scheme of my day-to-day life, I can't let it, really wear on me. It's like that, grain of sand kind of mentalities.
It doesn't serve a purpose in your day-to-day life. It serves a purpose, but it's a very small purpose of your true life.
Right.
Who's in front of you, who's still there, like Chad just alluded to. The students who want to be there are still there. They're still being loyal. They're still coming to you, getting all the information that they need at your, at the academy and whatnot. So those other people, it's like, hey, all right, do what you got to do. And I'm still going to have people here,
Right.
What was Ohio?
All I've asked, to be honest, but go ahead. Well, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, so you landed in Ohio with the academy. So what was that? Like, as in, why did you pick Ohio?
So I was going to school at Marshall University down in West Virginia.
Right on.
And I actually left Huntington to move to Washington, D.C. right when I first started training jiu-jitsu. So I started training in September of 1998. And about a year and a half into training, the first year I trained, like I was with a group. They're still down there in Huntington. They were really the first group training jiu-jitsu in West Virginia. It was called Ground Zero Fighting Systems. There's a group of them in Morgantown and a group down in Huntington. And I was there for like the first year. We didn't really know what we were doing. I mean, we were watching, there was like 6 of us on some folding mats. We shared space with a Kung Fu gym. We do like 30 moves a night. We didn't know. We just trained hard, and we'd get beat up by the same 2 instructors. And I use that term, was instructors. And, Tim and Ashley just would beat our ass. And so for the first year, I wouldn't even really call it training jiu-jitsu. We were just rolling around, watching, any Portuguese DVD or like video cassette we could find on eBay. We'd buy, just try to replicate what we saw. I mean, and so in about a year and a half after that, I moved to DC to briefly work in law enforcement in Washington. When I was there, actually, it's just crazy how the jiu-jitsu world works. When I went there for an interview, I like called a bunch of jiu-jitsu schools and it was like, hey, can I stop by and train? I'm a white belt. And I went to this school, it's called the Fighters Garage. It was in Falls Church, Virginia. And it was like the first time I'd ever seen a female instructor. I was like, this is a female purple belt. It must be a badass. And she was legit. And there was a guy there named Tony Waldecker. And Tony's the man. Like, he's a 5th degree under Helsa now. But back then he was like a 4-stripe blue belt. He was I want to say he was a Sambo world champion at that time. He was an arm wrestling world champion. He had been a Marine. This guy was a man's man. So long story short, I was like, man, I'm looking for a place to stay. And Tony had met me one time. He's like, hey, man, I got a space in my attic. So when I moved to the DC area, I didn't know anyone except for this guy I'd met at one open mat. And he just kind of opened his doors to me. And I lived there for almost a year. And I trained a lot with him. And the school was really, I don't want to say weird, but for me, it was weird. I just told you, we just rolled all the time at Ground Zero. Well, this school is very old school Gracie. So like white belts were not allowed to roll. You trained 1 class a week, was in street clothes. Like, it was very Valley Judo, like very old school. And every now and then I would sneak in and roll some with Tony because he was a blue belt. He's a big guy. I was a big guy, so he always wanted bigger guys to work with. But I would train with him, go over to a Yamasaki affiliate, and I would train there once a week. Then I would train with Lloyd Irvin probably twice a week, with Master Lloyd back then. And so he had some ties with my original coach, Ashley Lockwood. And so trained there for a while, moved back. Long story short, I graduated from college. And really, I was looking at either Atlanta, Charlotte, or Columbus. Those are pretty much the 3 biggest cities in proximity to Huntington, West Virginia. And really, it ended up Columbus was only on my list because I had been to a bunch of jiu-jitsu tournaments in Columbus. And I didn't really know anything about Columbus. My wife is from Southern Ohio. And honestly, that was like the first job I was offered out of college was in Columbus. So really, it wasn't like there was a plan to come here. It was just the first interview I had, it was easy to get to. It was only 3 hours from home. We drove up. I got the job. I moved like a week later. It was actually the weekend of the Arnolds in 2003, the first weekend of March. Then my wife moved up like a month later. So it's kind of crazy how it all played itself out.
That kind of stuff happens like that too, though. You know what I mean? Like when you sit back and look at it and you're like, yeah, that's kind of just how it works. And it's all meant. Look at the purpose now. I mean, look where you are, look at all the students that you've promoted and the people that have come through your academy that you've had and all that. I mean,
it's really crazy when you think about how I even started teaching in Columbus, because I really was under the mindset, I was only like a 3-stripe purple belt. And at my school and when I trained in Huntington, everyone was kind of on the same level. Like even the coaches I was just talking about, they were all, at that time, we'd been under George Gurgel for a while at that point, but we were all purple belts. I think maybe Little D had gotten his brown. I can't remember. But so anyway, when I came up to Columbus, the first thing I thought was like, man, I'm probably going to have to switch new team, because I'm clearly not capable of coaching. I don't have a school. We don't have an affiliate in Columbus. I know Helson. I'd worked for Master Helson like directly. So I'm very good friends and ties to the Helson Gracie School. And that's kind of what I thought was going to end up happening. And believe it or not, I don't know, have you ever heard of these are called AKJU, American Karate and Jiu-Jitsu Union? Mm-mm. So they're karate tournaments, and it's a guy out of Chillicothe named Don Madden. He's an old school karate guy. Well, he used to do grappling divisions, and they were real big in West Virginia. And he did one like a week after I moved to Columbus, like right here at this high school outside of Columbus. So I went. Just they're fun if you're like a blue belt or something. Their black belts are equivalent to like a blue belt, if you kind of get my drift. So I went and ended up running into this guy, and he was like, "Man, you're a purple belt. Were you from around here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just moved here." He goes, "Oh man, I teach it. I train at the school down the street. We'd love to have a purple belt come train with us sometime." So next thing you know, that was what was originally Columbus MMA. That's how I ended up teaching. Those guys didn't really have a coach. They had like 10 students. They were more of they were an IMB school. So Richard Bustillo was like a JKD. They did Muay Thai. They did grappling. And so I went over there and kind of met those guys. And really that's just how I ended up teaching at all in Columbus, was just happenstance. I happened to run into a named Vince, and from there it just kind of snowballed.
For rest is history.
Yeah, rest is history. So, but yeah, it's crazy how you mentioned you don't really realize how the butterfly effect of jiu-jitsu, right? You meet one person and that person connects you to another person, and then next thing you know, an opportunity presents itself. I would have never opened my academy, OCSA, if it wasn't for like some very significant like flashpoint moments that just happened to happen for me. I probably never would have had the confidence if it wasn't for my coach constantly telling me like, "No, you're a great instructor. You're going to open your own school one day. I know you'll have your own school." Like he would tell me that all the time. "You'll do this full time. Like I believe in you." George would constantly tell me that. And then honestly, oddly enough, meeting, I kind of met Matt Brown at a MMA like training session. One of my guys was getting ready for a fight. He was getting ready to have his very first amateur fight. I happened to be in the gym with him, and I was like, "This guy doesn't know a lot of jiu-jitsu. I'm not great, but I'll work out with him." We just became good friends, and I started training with him a lot, or I should say he trained at our school a lot. And I managed him for a little bit. And years go by, he makes it to UFC or whatever. And he actually was one of the first supporters of, like, he helped me get without getting too much into it, he kind of helped me get the OCSA up and running. And it's just one of those things that, if you'd asked me 8 years before when I first met him, that would have never been something that I thought would have played out. You know what I mean? So it's just crazy how people in this community and how you talk about loyalty. That's a sense of loyalty. That was a friendship move. That wasn't like I owe this guy anything, So yeah, it's crazy how many pieces can kind of the 6 degrees of separation kind of work in the jiu-jitsu and MMA community.
It does, very much so. I talked about this recently on a show with Chad, and I'm fairly new into jiu-jitsu, a little over a year now, and I just went in with the mindset of wanting to see who I was, and I wanted to train. I love it. I love training. I'm kind of a gym rat when it comes to that kind of stuff. Never expected to have the relationships that I have, or to gather the family, or, you know, like Chad's one of my best friends now. And it's like, we have a podcast together, you know, it's like, wow. Yeah. I never would have thought that, but to see and like to talk to individuals like you, and to have seminars and to talk to those guys, and to be around all the people that I've been around within the short period of time, I'm like, yeah, this is totally different than anything anyone could imagine. And it is super crazy in a great way. But yeah, like there is that small separation where it's like, hey, and like you said, Dustin, anyone will in the jiu-jitsu community pretty much will do anything for you, pretty much, I would think, you know, like at least that's my experience so far. It's like, hey, if I can help you, I'll do it, you know. So that's pretty cool. That's awesome, man. Well, we're glad you have an academy in Ohio.
Well, thank you. You know, I keep joking that when my daughter graduates in 5 or 6 years, whatever that is, that where if she goes to school somewhere, I'll move. I mean, we're gonna, you know, it's my only kid. If she goes to school far away, then my wife and I will pack up and we'll go. And her excuse is, "What are you gonna do about the school?" And I was like, "Well, you know, we'll figure that out when the time comes. We'll still be here. I'm not going anywhere. So school's not going anywhere. I mean, but you know, I have to follow my kids. So
sure, right on.
Thank you for that. I mean, you know, it's a blessing. It's a blessing.
It is. And to backtrack a little bit, you got to stay under George the whole time, right? So you never had to.
Yeah, I never had to. You know, and it was never. You know, George and I have a very close relationship. Mm-hmm. You know, he's almost more like family. I don't even. It's not that I don't respect him as my jiu-jitsu coach. That's not it at all. It's like it really, literally is like I see him as like family. You know, I could go almost a year maybe and not see him. It's been over a year now. And I'm sure the next time I see him, you know, he'll be screaming across the mat. He calls me Big Sexy. He has for, and that's always been my name. You know, you just kind of, it's one of those friendships when you beat on each other and you bleed and you share those kind of those moments with another person where you genuinely care. I mean, I've been there in the locker room. You know, how I met George was the like early MMA days. There was this show in Chillicothe, and I was the matchmaker. And I use that term loosely because back then people just showed up that day, and you looked at pieces of paper and said, "This guy looks like he should fight this guy," and that's how you did it. And you paid to fight, so you'd show up and give me $50, and then I'd let you fight in a cage that was made like a dog kennel.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, that's how I met George. This guy brings this guy named Ryan Stout, who was kind of a known MMA fighter out of Dayton area. And he comes over to me and goes, "I got this Brazilian kid here. He'll fight anybody in the building under 185 pounds. He doesn't care about the record. He'll fight him." And I'm looking over at this guy. And back then, George is like, he's kind of in shape, but he's got like this baby face. He's got this little typical cute little guy haircut or whatever. And I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
So I found some guy who's like there in like camo shorts and he's duct taping his hand before the fight. And he says he's had like 20 fights. I'm like, sure, George is gonna fight that guy. Well, I didn't know he was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, which, I mean, he could have been walking on water once I found out he was a brown belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu because
no one was then.
No one was that, right? And so, you know, my experience, my first opportunity to meet George was in those fights, and then talking to him afterwards, just kind of in awe, like, "Oh man, you're a brown belt. I studied jiu-jitsu. Oh, you should come to my academy." "Yeah, okay, man. I live in West Virginia." "No, really, you should come." I mean, I spoke to him for like 30 minutes. Fast forward probably 5 or 6 months, I'm at a jiu-jitsu tournament in Columbus, and we had just won. My buddy Brian and I went up there, and he comes over, he recognizes me, he goes, "Man, I thought I told you to come to my academy." And I said, "Man, I don't have a car. I'm a college student. You know, you should, you know, I don't have a way to get there." He says, "Look, you have a car?" Pointing to my friend. He's like, "Yeah." He says, "Okay, both of you come to my academy. You can stay at my house. Just come to my academy. Free. Just come." So, all right, we go up there maybe like 2 weeks, stay at his house. We do all these private lessons with him. We train in his academy. There in Middletown, Ohio, and never asked for $1. I mean, never, not one, right? And he's like, "So you guys are coming up next weekend?" I was like, "Next weekend." So in a couple of weeks, we go back up there, and he has a friend visiting from Fortaleza, Brazil, named Marcus Bonfim, and that guy was like a wizard. I mean, he did stuff I had never seen before. Some of the stuff I still use to this day, and again, didn't never asked me for $1. And it was his genuine care about his students is what always stuck with me. And so as the years and as I progressed and our team grew, it just became much more of a relationship of like, it's so cliche, right? Oh, jiu-jitsu is all about family. I mean, I say it even when new members show up at my school, like, hey, this is a cliche term, but you really will find people here that will ultimately be some of your closest friends. You won't be able to do anything about it. Jiu-jitsu will just make it happen. That is, to me, the greatest power jiu-jitsu holds over people is that it almost forces you to have a friendship that you didn't know was out there, right?
Yeah.
People this makeshift group of people that you probably never would come in contact with. On my mat some mornings I'll look down and I'll have the guy with the tattoo on his neck training with the police officer. I'll have the corporate executive over here training with the college student who smells like weed. I mean, it's like, you've got this, this combination of people that come together, and the one thing that seems to pull them together is jiu-jitsu. And so I think there's obviously something in it that's more than just the martial art aspect of it that kind of binds people together. So that's what stuck me to. I think that's what, and I'm a real loyal person, so I think that's what kind of got me to stick with George, and SAS team, and so it's never really been an option for me to consider going anywhere else.
That's the coolest thing about jiu-jitsu as well. People always ask you, obviously people in my family or outside will be like, why do you want to do this? Or, why would you go and do this? And I said, after I, got the gist of everything and fell into, let's say, the puzzle pieces and whatnot of, friendship there and whatnot, I was like, how awesome it is to walk into a place and no one cares where you came from or what you do. Absolutely. I was like, all they care about is your well-being and that you're training and that you're there. They care more about that and about everything else. They don't care about all that other nonsense that doesn't matter in the world. And I said, there's nothing like that in the world. And people are like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, I'm telling you, man, do it. Just try it. And it's not for everybody. I get it. Being choked out's not the greatest feeling in the world.
But Chad, let me ask you a question. Cause that I often wonder, and you've been around a long time, so you can speak to this. That term right there, you hear a lot of people try to say that jiu-jitsu is for everybody, and I don't necessarily. I'm like you, Terry. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the ability to learn jiu-jitsu is open to everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. But I don't know that because I think it takes you have to be honest with yourself to really stick with jiu-jitsu. Because if you're one of these people, I tell people now, like the mats are like truth serum, and who you are as a real person, not a jiu-jitsu practitioner, who you are as a person comes out on the mat. If you're a quitter, then you're going to quit jiu-jitsu. You're not going to stick with it because it's too hard. It's too hard psychologically to deal with all the hard come with learning jiu-jitsu when you first out. So, I mean, do you find that that's a true statement, or has that been something that maybe?
Yeah, I think I've changed over. I used to be that guy, like it is for everybody, but it's definitely not. I mean, I think if it was, we'd all have 1,000 students at our door, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously family and different things interfere with people that might not still come or they quit, but it's not for everybody. The potential is there for it to be for everybody, but it's not. Definitely not.
And I even think, it doesn't have to do with dumbing down your school. In other words, like, I tell people all the time, we don't, at my academy, we don't necessarily teach for, street fighting. We don't necessarily teach for MMA. We don't necessarily teach for competition. We just teach jiu-jitsu. Like that's just what we teach. So when people say, well, this isn't legal in that tournament, that's great, but I don't teach for tournament rules. Like I teach
right.
or something useful. It's part of what we're going over, right? And so I think you can make jiu-jitsu fit everyone's ability, but I think sometimes you're not being genuine or true to what you're trying to accomplish. And so I've never tried to kind of cram in a certain way of teaching. It's just we just teach. We're really fortunate. We have several black belts at our academy, and so all of us have slightly different backgrounds. I mean, they've all been with me for a long, long time. I mean, long, long time. But we all have a different view. I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing. jiu-jitsu is that you can get different points of view. But even regardless of who's teaching, me or Rich or Zach, or, you know, we all have different backgrounds. I think we're all, you know, we all just teach jiu-jitsu. We don't try to soften it. We don't try to make it super hard. You know, just it's hard enough as it is. But I think individuals have to find what they like about it and hold on to that. And that's what they'll stick with. And sometimes it's the people. I mean, I'm sure I've got students
100%.
that the only reason why they keep coming back is they've latched on to a group of friends that they never had, or community that they never had.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are looking for that. They just don't realize it when they come, you know, and I've said it, you know, 100 times and a lot on this podcast is when people walk in East Coast, I want them to feel that atmosphere first.
Yes.
And then say, oh, they're good at jiu-jitsu too.
Yeah.
You know, the atmosphere is you know, Terry hasn't been around that long yet, but you've been in gyms where you walk in and you're like, I'm going to fight today.
Yes.
Or, you know,
yes.
You know, you get that vibe as soon as you walk in, and I don't want that, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I think what's funny, Chad, is a lot of the stuff you say, I know, or at least I'm going to assume are character traits that I'm going to throw you out there that you picked up from Steve.
Oh, a lot, for sure.
And I want to tell you, you know, you probably have never heard me say this, but a lot, I mean, I already had an idea when I was building, like opening my school, the kind of culture I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
How to do a lot of those things, I picked up from conversations I had with Steve. I don't know if you remember one time I came up to your place and teaching that night, maybe. I'm not sure. But just a little, I think we had like an hour-long conversation, Steve and I did. And it was just one of those things, again, so that it's always kind of stuck with me. And it talked about the culture. And that was something that we both agreed that's got to be at the forefront of any school that's going to be successful. And if you develop a culture, it doesn't matter how good the people are at your school, it doesn't matter what kind of facility you have, there has to be an inclusive culture at your school that kind of just works its way into every belt level. It can't just be the instructors. It can't just be the black belts or whoever, the pro fighter in the corner. It really had to be, we are establishing a culture. And so, like you said, when people come into my school, I don't even like doing a lot of business over email. I'll text, I'll set up a meeting, but I want you to come to my school so you can look around and you can see, like, man, this isn't what I thought it was, especially the I want to be an MMA fighter guy. I need you to come to my school and really see what a school is about. I mean, that's why I picked the school. So I called it an academy. We teach. We're a school. We're a place of higher learning. It's not just to come in here and beat each other in the face. You know, we're not in here just strangling the new guy in the corner. Like, I want you to feel like I'm going to a class to learn from an instructor. And oh, by the way, I get to do it with all my really good friends. And I'm learning something that's very tangible and challenging at the same time.
Yeah. Absolutely. I had a kid message me on Facebook the other day. One day, he's like, "Hey, I really want to do MMA and I want to fight." And I'm like, "Are you sure?" You know, it's my first response. Yep. I said, "We really don't have an MMA class. We have kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. Come in, try a free class." So we did jiu-jitsu, and he signed up like the next day. Yep. He's like, "Thank you," and he made sure he came and told me. He's like, "Every one of your students came and talked to me. They helped me," and that's what it's all about.
100%.
100%. You know, I don't.
That same scenario played out for me just the other day. We had a 16-year-old come in, wants to be a fighter. He's from East Africa, and his dad showed me videos of how they fought in East Africa. He's like, "This is how we wrestle in East Africa." And you're in the sand wearing a belt, like beating each other. We're not going to do it. And his son was like, "Yeah, I want to be a fighter." I said, "Well, look." So he showed up one day, and there was either the kickboxing class or the jiu-jitsu class. And I said, "Man," he said, "which one do you think I should do?" And I said, "Well, do the jiu-jitsu class for. I know you want to be a fighter, but go try jiu-jitsu class and, see how it goes. And then I'll follow up with you tomorrow." I was leaving the academy. And then I get a text the next morning. He was like, "You were so right. I'm in love with jiu-jitsu now." He says, "Yeah, let's sign up. I'm not worried about being a fighter." And that happens all the time. I think it happens at all of our academies. Again, though, the culture plays a big part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's, if somebody wants to fight, we'll get them there too. And, you've had fighters over the years. We've had some. That's why I've never considered ourselves a fight gym. We're a martial arts academy,
right.
And I always, if guys were going to fight, we had rules like you're training in the gi, you're doing this, and you have to, carry yourself a certain way. So That was my big thing when I started bringing guys to like your tournaments, is like, we're going to be represented in this way, because I never want to be that school to be like, oh man, East Coast is here. I want to be that school that's like, oh, East Coast, them are cool dudes. That's what, and that'll never change.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something about the, reputation in our community. It's still so small, right? I mean, one person that represents your school could be at a tournament, act like a jackass, and now your school is instantly labeled as that has that jackass, right? No matter how much good work you try to put out in the community, no matter how much, how the integrity of the instructors or character or goodwill you've done, so it's really important. Chad's, you're 100% right. I mean, I think we have rules too. Like, I don't even consider training someone for MMA until they've earned their blue belt. Like, that's not even something we want a discussion, because if you can't stick around long enough to get your blue belt, why am I wasting my time trying to train you?
Sure.
Right. So, but I think the character piece is something that, unfortunately, I think that it is something that isn't always adhered to, even at jiu-jitsu schools. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've met, across the board. I've been very fortunate to travel with jiu-jitsu. And I mean, I've been to just about any state. I've met, just like anything else, you'll meet jerks in any athletic competitive environment.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So, and regardless of rank, I know a couple of high rank guys. I'm like, man, you're a jackass. Like, I don't know how that guy gave you a black belt, or
how did that happen? Right.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that, I guess, right? Like, just in general. I mean, you just
numbers, right? It's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game for sure. Yeah.
It's bound to happen.
But for the culture, for the most part, at least from my experience, everyone's super cool. Like, I've been interacted with, and it's like, hey, I told Chad, I had a guy I work with reached out to me weeks ago, and he was like, man, I didn't know you train jiu-jitsu. What's your rank and stuff? And he trains up in towards the Cleveland area, and he's a purple belt. And I was like, oh dude, I'm just a white belt. I started a little over a year ago. He's like, oh, that's awesome. And I'm an engineer and office junkie, so but we were working at home, so I haven't seen him forever, because we have a gym at work. So I've usually been working out every day in the gym there and stuff. And he's like, oh man, now I know you work out all the time. And I was like, no. I was like, that's all other stuff. I was like, I'm just a white belt, but I would love to train anytime you want. He's like, all right, man, we'll hook up sometimes. So, but it was cool. Just like that small little thing. It was like, you got some good stuff like that. And then, like you said, Dustin, sometimes you'll come across people that are just like, what are you like? Oh, what's this? Which I've told Chad this recently. I stopped at the store, and I had a rash guard on that said Jiu-Jitsu Against the World. And I was out on my way to the gym, and the guy was like, you train Jiu-Jitsu? What's your rank? And I was like, I've, just been in over a year, a little bit. And I was like, I'm just a white belt. He's like, oh, you're only a white belt? And I was like, yeah, I'm just a white belt. I was like, school's down the street, man. You're more than welcome to come train anytime.
Right.
That's all I said. I was like, what did you want me to say? Like, I'm going to be 44 years old in a couple of weeks.
Right. I mean, realistically, I find that when you meet someone and that's the first question, they're completely oblivious to, one, the skill it takes and the work it takes, obviously, for jiu-jitsu. But in my opinion, I think they're also oblivious to really their own self-defense capabilities. Because if you take a student who's training 3 days a week, good jiu-jitsu, not even doing boxing or kickboxing, just jiu-jitsu. You give me that person for 8 months, 10 months, not a blue belt yet, but just really solid 3-4 star white belt. I would let any mugger attempt to try to take that person's wallet, and they would have a hell of a fight on their hands.
Sure. Absolutely.
I use at my school is that if I took a person and threw them in the ocean, right, and I never taught them to swim, they would flail around, they would move their body, but ultimately they would drown, right? Because no one ever taught them how to swim.
Sure.
I took a person and gave them 10 swimming lessons and threw them in the ocean, they're also moving their body, but they're moving their body the right way. More efficient with the movements. They understand what the water is going to try to do to them, what gravity is doing to them. They understand because someone has showed them the right way to move. And it's like, for people that train jiu-jitsu, that's all. I don't. So I'm not a fighter. You're not a fighter. Chad's not a fighter. I'm not a fighter. Sure. But jiu-jitsu has given me almost like a cheat code if I ever had to fight.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to know how to play this game. The question is does the person across across from me? Do they know how to play the game? Because if not, they're in a bad spot.
Yeah. Your world's apart.
That's what jiu-jitsu, I think, gives, and that's the confidence I think it gives to new people who are like yourself, newer to the art that you do. You just have a greater sense of your own ability to carry yourself.
And I think that keeps us out of trouble too. The confidence, the way you carry yourself. Obviously timing is, time and place always comes into that. But I think, you carry yourself a certain way. People just, you treat people different. They look at you different, all that stuff. I've never been in a fight in my life ever. I don't plan on it,
Yeah. Not since I've trained jiu-jitsu have I ever been in a fight. I was not the best kid, but since I've trained jiu-jitsu, I've never really had to, I'm also a big guy, so I don't get challenged a whole lot.
That's true. Yeah. I don't see many people running up on you.
No.
Running up to get an autograph, shake your hand.
It's funny though, because as an athletic director, I'm in a city school, so when kids, AD Ware over there does, because we have some fitness stuff in our academy, and one of the football players works out with one of the trainers at my gym, and so he was telling some of the kids one day, and I had all this money for a soccer game at the gate, and this kid's like, "What would you do if I just decided to take that money?" And I said, "I guess you would take that money. I'm not going to. School's money. It's not mine. You want to take it." The kid was like, he's like, "I wouldn't mess with Ware. He knows how to fight. He does all that jiu-jitsu stuff." And this kid was like, and he's one of the bigger kids, like a lineman, and he's like, "Mr. Ware, you're too old, man. I don't think you could." I said, "Man, I'm not. Just if you want to come to my academy, we can roll around, have fun." I said, "But I'm not. You're right. You probably would wear me out. I couldn't do anything with you." So that's what are you going to do? You're gonna. I think honestly, it's a lot of times it's the bigger guys that do get called out more because people just want to. It's kind of like the pride effect, right? The Japanese, big scary Bob Sapp guy. You just want to see what he can do.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
So it's all the more reason why. Just kind of.
You got more to live up to, right?
Yeah, I don't really worry about it too much.
Do most of the kids know? Because you're the athletic director. Do they know?
I think the ones. So it's crazy as an AD to my school. I talk to some of the kids, but it's more just passerby. I spend most of my time as a coach. I spend a lot of time.
Nice. Okay.
So all the coaches know how to do, especially the wrestling coach, and even around our school district, a lot of people know, what I do. I'm in a unique position. I jumped into being an AD just because I've really kind of checked off every other athletic accomplishment job-wise, right? I've been in every part of this combat sport game for better part of 15 years and made a living at it, and so a couple of years ago, the school was kind of doing pretty well. And honestly, the tournament scene in Ohio had become very saturated. It was, my business mind was like, this is not making as much sense anymore to try to run 5 or 6 tournaments a year in comparison to the other 5 or 6 tournaments that are going on. We was like cannibalizing our own,
own product,
clients.
Like people and clients,
So it kind of was losing its interest in me. I just was like, this is not as fun as it used to be. The tournaments were all getting smaller, and so I was like, there's a couple of positions I wouldn't mind looking into, and I enjoy. One of the things I've always really liked about jiu-jitsu is I think it brings out, in most people, it can bring out, let them see something in themselves they didn't see. And sports was always that for me. Being an athlete growing up, it provided me just intangible character traits that I don't think anything else would have brought out in me. And then jiu-jitsu was a whole new thing when I got in at 19, to have this sense of family. It developed a part of character that I didn't think I had, a mental toughness that even then I didn't have. And so I was like, I think I want to do something with sports and kids. And so really the AD job just kind of landed in my lap. It wasn't
nice.
What you're looking for. So
it's another blessing, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm very fortunate for the people that have come into my life and opened doors for me. So I can't, I can't help but thank those people. So.
Yeah. You know what that is, Dustin? That's good karma, because you've done the same thing for people too. It all goes hand in hand, man. Pay it forward.
Appreciate that. I hope so. I would say probably one of the, I got to got a chuckle when I saw that post you made last year or earlier this year. I don't remember what it was about the Mount Rushmore
of Ohio. Yeah.
And dude, I mean, I about fell out my chair when I read that because I was so humbled to even be considered in that conversation. So I don't know. I mean, I just hope that, you know, I know what jiu-jitsu has done for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunities it's provided me to, you know, as a poor kid growing up in West Virginia, to be able to, you know, teach multiple times in foreign countries and to be able to travel the world and go to places I never thought were going to be something that was on my radar, and to have literally friends in every state and every corner of the country that I could call on a moment's notice and literally have legitimate help if needed it. Right. And,
yeah.
You know, I just always wanted to, or want to continue to try to give back to the community that, for this art that has done so much for me and my family. And so if that's what's going to award or afford me some good fortune,
mm-hmm.
then so be it. I'm just going to keep trying to strengthen our community however I can, and just be as positive influence as I can. So
yeah, that's what it's all about, man.
Keep grinding.
Positive. Keep
Yeah,
grinding.
for sure.
Keep positive.
You gonna do? You gonna get back into the tournament scene? You gonna? You think?
Yeah, I'll probably. You know, so I was waiting to see. Obviously, with COVID, it was. I served on the governor's advisory committee last year to reopen athletic facilities, and it's crazy how I even got brought into that. It was like it was a chain reaction of phone calls. This general who works for Dewan, who's the head of veteran affairs, calls her son. Her son's like, I know a guy, let me call him. That guy ended up being one of my old fighters, Chris Farrington. Chris Farrington calls me. And he was like, yeah, man, this Major General Ashenhurst wants to talk to you. And I'm like, for what? And so I end up on this advisory committee or whatever. And so when the COVID thing, when they shut us all down and then opened us back up in May, the guidelines that were in place back then, I thought it would be very difficult for any venue to really allow, you know, whatever. So fast forward, you know, almost a year now. And I think we're at a point. I mean, obviously I've attended a couple of tournaments here recently and kind of seen what's going on there. And I mean, to each their own. I'm not gonna tell them how they should run their tournament or
sure.
Mm-hmm.
what rules they should follow. I mean, we all have guidelines. And at the end of the day, I just remember when we all first shut down here in Central Ohio, I remember vividly the March 13th weekend, me texting my buddy Robin Giesler at the Gracie Academy and BJ Nelson at Super Systems. And I said, guys, what do y'all think about this COVID thing? Like, what are you guys going to do? Are you really going to shut down? We're talking about shutting our business down. And we all agreed, probably the responsible thing to do is we'll close for a week and then we'll open back up. Like, that's kind of where we were at with everything, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I think even now I still carry the desire to be responsible. But at the same time, I think we know a lot more now. And I think I think people that are willing to, I don't want to use the word risk, but they're wanting to train jiu-jitsu, do something physical, they're going to come to your tournament as long as you're being responsible. I think if I can do it responsibly, then I'm going to. So I'm probably going to do a small one at my academy. I've been doing a lot of my tournaments at my academy.
Nice.
Set up perfectly for it.
Yeah.
And so we'll probably do a small one, like no-gi only. Do like 3-4 weight classes, just a small, just to kind of get back. It's been over since we've ran one, so
sure.
Probably the end of summer, sometime in fall, is when I'm going to try to begin. So,
how many students you guys have?
So, you asked me that. It's crazy right now. Now, for me, we've never had a ton of students, and when I say ton, it's like I look at someone like Bill Jones, who's got like, I don't know, it seems like he has 1 million students.
Right.
Like, and Bill's just really good at knocking that out. Right.
Right.
And so we've always hovered around like 110, 115 students.
Mm-hmm.
But this I don't know if it's the weather. I don't know if people are finally getting comfortable with going out and doing something like jiu-jitsu. Maybe it's something they always wanted to try, and now they're trying it. I don't know. But in the last, actually, let me look at my phone real quick. In the last week, we've signed up like 26 students.
Wow.
And I don't have good metrics as to why, because we have done nothing different. But it just, I mean, like, it was because between my full-time job and the school, and my daughter plays a lot of sports, right? So AAU basketball and club soccer right now. So I have very few times where I can meet. I told you earlier, I like to meet with every single family.
Sure.
And so the other night, I had a scheduled time to meet with a guy, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to bring my 2 kids in." I said, "Okay, great." So he comes in, and he goes, "Well, there's actually 5 of them. Their cousins want to come too." And I was like, "Okay." So my normal, like our little kids class, which normally has like 9 kids in it, 10 kids maybe, had like 17 kids that night. And so no, I mean, right now the school's growing. We're probably full-time and part-time students, because we have a couple different ways that people could be members. But I would say full-time and part-time, we're probably right around 150, 160 students, something like that.
Nice. Man.
Yeah. So not crazy, not like, some of these mega academies you hear about, but it's definitely a lot more than when I started 11 years ago.
Sure. Yeah. I bet. Yeah.
Chad was at my grand opening, right?
Yeah.
My original school had a 24-foot by 24-foot, and I thought, man, I'm doing it big. This is going to be the next school in Columbus. And we had like 24-foot by 24-foot, had some blue mats that went about 4 feet up on the wall. We had a little cage panel. I mean, it was the whole building, office, bathroom, and training space was like 1,400 square feet. And it was clean. That was a big thing for me. It was clean. And it just looked the part. Now, in my mind's eye, what I envisioned was like 3 times that big. But I had just lost my job and decided to open a school at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So all this is kind of going on. Like, if I'm going to do it, my wife was super supportive. She's like, "You're going to do it. Let's do it.
Do it now." Yeah.
So it was much smaller. I remember the night we finished cleaning it and we were walking out, and she's like, "You still don't look whatever." And I was like, "Well, I just thought it'd be bigger." I thought it'd be a bigger place. But we had like 25 students, something like that, maybe when we first opened. And then we kind of just slowly chugged along. And
you could.
Have you been to our new place?
Not the new one. I have not.
So we moved about 2 years ago. And really, again, talk about just right place, right time. So we ended up at our old school. We expanded like several times within this little business plaza we were in. It was kind of like it was really Spartan. Like in the summer when it's 90 degrees, it was 95 in our gym. So horrible for kids. Really horrible for hard training. I mean, in the winter, it would get down to like 40 degrees. You have to wear like mittens and socks, bricks still building. One summer of 2018 or whatever, or 2019, whatever it was, 2018, I noticed there were no kids in the kids class. Like, I walked over in the other room where the kids were, and I was like, "There's no kids in there." It was like 92 degrees. And I was like, "Man, it sucks." So I started looking around on the internet, and I found this, like one of those leasing companies, and I found this space. A buddy of mine who's in real estate, and I said, "Man, can you call them?" And he said, "Yeah, you can call them, but it's probably gonna be really expensive." And it was this big industrial space. And oddly enough, the address is Americana Parkway.
Ah, perfect.
So I pull in, and I'm looking at this place. I'm like, this would be perfect, but there's no way I can afford it. And I have a year left on my lease, right? Yeah. So we leave and go to Master Worlds. I'm in Vegas. The guy calls me and says, "Hey, he likes the idea of you moving in. If you could do a few years, 3 years or something, he'll do X." And he gave me a number. And I said, "Are you sure that's the right number?" The place is like just under 8,000 square feet, but yet it was going to be less over the next 3 years of the current place I was in. This place is huge. Yeah. And it had central air and heat. It had, we put a shower in there. We did all this stuff. And so I go to my current place and I say, "Look, man, because of the way the facility's laid out, I'm losing a lot of potential business. What do you think about me breaking my lease early and you just being cool with it?" How's that work? Because I was one of his only paying tenants, because he owned all these units, but then he would like give them out for free because he owned a lot of properties in Columbus. So like he'd have like a roofing company a security company in one. But I was one of the only like businesses he didn't work with. So I'd always been a paying tenant and really cool with him. Always paid rent on time. And he says, Dustin, let me call you tomorrow. He calls me back and says, hey, how soon can you be out? And I said, well, in a month. He says, it just so happens the doggy daycare 3 doors down had just told him they were moving out unless they could get a unit with 4 doors. That's my unit.
Oh, man.
I told him that unless he needed showers built in because they were going to start doing dog grooming. We had showers installed when we built the school.
Man.
So he was like, if you can leave by, I think it was November 17th, then we're golden. I moved out and opened the doors of my new place November 18th. Broke my lease, no problem, and got a better deal than the place I was in for 2,000 more feet.
That's
so
awesome.
It was crazy how that all worked out. Yeah, it was crazy how it worked out. But so
that's huge. Yeah,
man, school's doing great.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that, man. I'm glad that it sounds like it's growing. Things are going well. Then everyone's getting back to normal and stuff. That's cool. Very cool.
You just got to look where you came from too, you know. I was at that little spot, Columbus MMA, many times too.
Yeah, that place. I'm talking. You want to talk about hot box? I mean,
that place was hot. I remember.
We bought 900 square feet of mat, and we thought we were like the new Evolve Center. I mean, like we thought we were the best. We bought those folding red mats. Until you go to clean those folding red mats, and you'd find just the most disgusting slime of hair in the creases of those. We didn't probably mop those things but once or twice a month.
Nice.
And, that place, you know, I mean, you remember where you come from, but that place, I remember one time it was one of our first female students, and we had a daytime class, and she comes walking in, and I was like, class is about over. She goes, oh, I'm not here for class. And she went back out to her car. She came back with some big yellow gloves, a bucket, and like bleach. And she goes, I cannot train at this school if you guys don't clean that bathroom. And so she went there and scrubbed. And this bathroom was disgusting. But I didn't even use the bathroom there. I'd leave and go to like down the street. Like it was so nasty. So yeah, Columbus MMA, it was what it was. I mean, it was a small little like 900 square foot. I mean, it was probably about 1,000 square feet or something like that. It was tiny, but it served its purpose. And like I said, the place I originally started in Huntington, man, it was literally just some folding mats above a Mexican restaurant, shared with a kung fu gym, and so that place was definitely old school, like nothing like it. So I look at the place I have now, and now every time I walk out of my academy at night, and I'm the last one there, and I turn off all the lights, and it's pretty cool. I'll have to send you a picture, Chad. The way the emergency lights, certain lights are set to stay on all the time.
Right.
For some reason, the one that's right over the middle of my mat shines perfectly down on my huge logo on my wall. So
nice.
Turn off all the lights. The one light that stays on is right over our logo. And I would be lying to you if I say, you know, there are some nights, you know, the other night, in fact, when I was there, I'm looking around and there's so many people in there.
Yeah.
And then they leave and I'm locking up for the evening. And I just kind of catch myself and I'll look over at that logo and I'm like, man, that is just crazy to think where jiu-jitsu has brought me from there to here. And then honestly, how many people it's brought from there to here. I mean, I had a student just this morning. He's a correctional officer. He was actually one of my very first students that signed up 11 years ago. And he comes over to me and says, hey, watch this video. And this guy's a really humble, quiet guy. He's a really experienced purple belt. Mm-hmm. He shows me the video. Now, he works in the yard in a maximum security prison, right? Their SRT team, and he gets into it a lot. And he's in very good shape. And sure enough, I'm watching this video. 2 roommates are going at it. And then next thing you know, you see my student just run full speed. He grabs this guy, he breaks him up, he throws him on the ground. They try to fight him. I mean, he immediately goes to knee on chest, gets the guy in just more hold, just to hold the arm in place, able to control him, but also able to disengage and defend himself from the other inmates that are in the yard. And, you know, he just says, hey, man, I just, you know, thank you. He says, you know, because I've been here for this long, I was able to not even have to think. I could react. And, you know, I went home that night to my wife and child and didn't think anything of it. So for me, those kind of experiences are powerful, right?
Absolutely.
Students who are police officers, 2, 3 in the morning. Hey man, I just got into a foot chase, and just thank you. What we've worked on in class over the years, it made it easier for me to go home tonight.
Yeah,
that stuff's it's crazy how that makes you feel.
Yeah, it's priceless. I mean, yeah,
There's
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what changed, but the last 3 years, probably our LEO, like students has went through the roof. Like I went from not very many to like, I bet I have close to 40 now. So
that's awesome.
Some of that is adding an afternoon class just because of their crazy schedule.
Yes.
So that definitely has helped out, but same thing. Like I could not imagine being an officer and not training jiu-jitsu.
We were just talking today. So I've been a consultant so when I first moved up here, a lot of the people I trained with were police officers, and they were getting better, and they ended up becoming instructors for different departments around Columbus. And then a few years back, I was asked to be pretty much a full-time consultant for Franklin County Sheriff's Office. And I would go in there periodically and work with their instructors and work with their current academy, the people that are in the academy to graduate. And so I would get hands-on a lot with these young recruits. And now, I mean, one of my black belts is a lieutenant for CPD, so that obviously helps.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have, I can tell you, one of my other black belts is actually in the academy right now. I mean, there's some mornings we'll have 25 people in class, and it'll be 20 law enforcement officers.
Yep, same thing. Yeah.
Nice.
We've always had, and I go to the academy and I tell them, I said, look, I don't care if you train at my school. I don't care. I'll tell you the closest school to you, but do me a favor so that you can go home and do your job well. Go train.
Yeah.
One of the biggest, and Jake, one of my purple belts, who is a pretty high-speed officer. I don't want to give too much of his business, but pretty high-speed guy. And he would say, Dustin, the biggest problem we have is that, working in law enforcement is an alpha position. You have to have an alpha mentality, even if you're necessarily an alpha person, right? So when they get that responsibility, and they go through that initial training, they automatically feel that I don't want to put myself back in a situation where I'm no longer the alpha. So even though I know I could probably better myself, I know that, Chad whipping up on me would probably be better for my ability to do my job, because they're all far more likely to need to be able to use their brain and their mouth and their body than their weapon, or at least if they're doing their job well.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, it is so hard to get those people with that mentality to just be humble for an hour a night.
Yeah.
Go learn something that could literally change or save their life or someone else's life, that they don't have to, elevate that escalation of force, right? And so I just think that if they would train more, officers would train more in a multitude of things, right? It would probably change a lot of their lives for the better, but also maybe curb some of the current situations that we have sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to he's a retired sheriff now and works for, he's a bail bondsman now and works for the one school. And he said, people are just afraid to go hands-on.
Yep.
They're just not confident in their skills. So if they're not going hands-on, you know what that leads to. I mean,
right. I'm going to go to my next tool.
Right.
And we're going to keep escalating. Right.
Yeah. And in their mind, that's the tool that gets respect, unfortunately.
Right.
So,
right. Well, that's the one that you don't have to worry. If you don't have to worry. That's that no one's going to tell you you're right or wrong. The person can tell you if you did it right or wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if they would just, and also, like I said, it's jiu-jitsu's humbling. They've been trained, they've been conditioned that they cannot, even in training, they're conditioned just like military, right? So I'm a level 2 MACP. I did the Modern Army Combatives as the civilian, and I've trained some military people in the past. And it's not that a lot of times when you get the new military guy, especially if he's fresh out of whatever training, they come to your school. They are, balls to the wall, hell on wheels. You can throw a couple of they're still going to fight for the life. But that's why they have been conditioned that if I lose this match, I don't lose a tournament. I'm fighting literally for survival. They've been hardwired that way. And so it's really hard to sometimes get that group of people to then also say it's okay to come in here and lose. It's okay to come in here and learn. It's okay to come in here and not be the best guy all the time, because you've got to learn. You've got to give yourself the opportunity to learn. And I think if we could find a way to get, and it's slowly, like he said, I mean, his law enforcement group is growing. Ours is growing all the time. It's gotten much better, but it can always get much better.
Sure.
I mean, I talk to Academy cadets all the time, and, you know, they're all like, yeah, train. Academy graduates, they're going to do their 8 hours a year in service and call it a day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, hopefully it's trending towards more training now than ever. You know what I mean? Just because of obviously as prevalent as it is in our society and what we're all seeing, we definitely need it. And it's deconditioning the mind that's been conditioned, because it is conditioned. You know, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, Dustin, when someone walks into your academy or someone walks into Chad's academy, and it's a culture. And yes, it's not for everybody. Jiu-Jitsu isn't for everybody, but it can be, or you have to have that. It's got to be programmed in you that, hey, you can do this, or you do have to have that mindset. You got to have a little bit of a, chip on your shoulder, kinda, in terms of doing it, because you got to be willing to take some pain and be able to fight a little bit. You know, when I say fight, I mean, you're competing on a mat, not physically fighting, but a lot of the guys, from LEOs or military guys, they've been conditioned. So you've been broken down already, and then they've been built up to where they want to be, or whoever wants them to be that way. And so it's hard for them to come back to, hey, but I know a lot of the guys that are at East Coast, man, a lot of them, all of them are great. All the LEO guys are great and train super hard. And, they take their training very seriously, that are there. So hopefully
I would say at my school, and it's probably the same at your place and just about anywhere else and I say that when I say anywhere else, always the caveat is anywhere else that's running a legitimate academy.
Sure. Yeah.
That has a bunch of cops who train in the garage. That's not anywhere else. That's just a guy training in the garage. Any other legitimate academy, I always find that my LEOs are probably the very first ones that are willing to go over and work with anybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's in their character, right? That's in their DNA. That's who they are. They want to help people. I don't want to get on a rant politically, whatever, but the police officers I know are good people.
They're good people. Yeah.
They're good people. White, black, doesn't matter. They're
sure.
Good.
Yeah.
And so when I see them in class, those are the first ones I know they're going to reach over and find the new guy, the weak, so to speak, right?
Sure. Yeah.
That's just in them. That's who they are. So, we just got to get more of them to realize that it's okay to not always have to have the alpha flag on and just train.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
Okay with it.
Yeah. So we're doing that. Are you going to come up to the fire games?
What day is that? It's in June, right?
Yeah, June 12th. It's a Saturday.
Yeah. I think because I posted something on our Legion page, which is like our team page.
Yeah.
And I think I don't have anything that weekend. So I'd already told them because I wanted to get. I have a couple of my LEOs are really high ranked. They're brown belts, black belts, or whatever. Right. But we have some new. It's fire as well, right?
It's fire, military. It's
okay. So I've got some guys that I love. I have a heavyweight blue belt. I want you guys to see this guy when I bring him up.
Oh boy.
Oh man. So we call him Thanos.
Oh man.
Thanos is a machine. And you ask anybody in my academy, I've never rolled with another human being. This must be what it feels like to fight a superhero. Possible for another human. And I say that because he used to be, when I first met him, he's in law enforcement, he's a deputy. And when I first met him, he was about 300 pounds, and I'm just massive, right? And he's a powerlifter at one of the most elite powerlifting gyms on planet Earth, Westside Barbell, right? He's one of their elite lifters.
Okay.
And he's not in jiu-jitsu at that time. And so a few years later, he shows up at my gym. He's like 250. He lost like 50 pounds. And he's very quiet. He's very humble. One of the best students I have in my school in terms of he could literally swat anybody because he's not a tall guy, but he's just massive, right? He's so humble and so just wants to learn jiu-jitsu. He does no gi, but he up the gi, plays great half guard bottom, likes open guard. And And when you see him, though, he just looks like this big, terrifying white gorilla. Like he wears shorts. You can like see the striations in his thighs through his pants.
Man.
He has like a 110-pound deadlift. It's stupid how powerful this man is.
Man.
And yet he doesn't get tired. He has really good. He's a solid blue belt.
Yeah.
It's like I can't wait to see that. Like I love watching him roll people because he has no takedown game, but we're just like, all right, ready, go, and he just tackles them. Like, there's no stopping that guy. So, but yeah, I do have some guys, Chad. I want to bring up. One, I love the sense of camaraderie at those events.
Yeah.
You remember a few years ago? It's been 6 years now. I did a military only grappling tournament.
Mm-hmm.
In conjunction with the Army, got him Anthony Santiago. He used to live in Columbus. He's now in Colorado now. We got together and did a military grappling tournament, and it was awesome. I mean, different veterans come out and compete and roll, and we broke it up by BJJ belt level, but also if they had like their level 4 max, like a belt, or we kind of found a systematic way to do it, and it was just awesome. I mean. The camaraderie that day to see these guys, some of them, some of these veterans, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard. It was awesome. Yeah. Anytime there's an event like that, we always try to come out and support. So we're hoping to be there. And like I told you before, any help you need from me, I'd be happy.
Well, I might need it. We'll see this is the first year since it's on a Saturday. It's usually on a Wednesday afternoon. So
see, they used to do it in Columbus.
Yeah.
And so I helped, he used to got Major Keys. He's retired. He's now with the Franklin County. I helped him a couple years to run it. Mm-hmm. And it was, I can't remember what day it was on. It may have been a weekday there as well, but it was usually well attended. I mean, 20, 25, I mean, not huge.
Yeah.
25 people there.
This one has not. So
okay.
When I started helping, they asked me, it was when Victory was still around. They would have it over at Victory. And, somebody asked me if I'd come and help ref and set up some matches. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I think we had like 6 people show up. One guy drove from Kentucky. I'm like, and I told the guys, I'm like, this is embarrassing.
Absolutely.
This is, you have to do something. So the following year we had it at East Coast and it was a little better. That was 2019. So this is the first year on a Saturday that I've been involved, and hopefully, hopefully it'll do better. I told my, I have enough guys to fill it up. So
if you send me that flyer, send me a link. I'll share it on the AGC page. That page has been inactive for Lord knows how long. I haven't posted anything on there in probably a year.
Yeah, until that post the other day went wild, right? Did you see that?
About the AGC having a tournament?
Yeah.
That event was from 2 years ago.
I know, because I saw somebody like it or comment, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, some guy. So I saw that. Some guy was like, he shared it, and I thought, no one's going to buy traction on that. And then like Chris Blanky posted, that's my boy. Chris Blanky posted, let's go, guys. And I'm like, no. Did you look at the date, Chris? That's 2019. But we will be back. So thanks for the support.
That's the best.
Yeah, so
good looking out.
That was hilarious.
Still getting some love. That's a good thing, I guess.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but I'll send you some stuff, and hopefully, like I'm not handling the registration, but I told the guys that are, I'm like, hey, I need to know who is signing up that week. Like, how many people do I have? Because it's I don't want to walk in Saturday morning and there's 100 people, which would be awesome, but I need to make sure
I can try to throw, because I hope to know the date of my tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And I was planning on sending out. I haven't used our email blast in forever.
Oh, right.
What I'll do is whenever I do put that together, I could throw a link onto that.
Okay.
And, hopefully get the word out.
Yeah, and I think it'll help too if people go to like that. I'll send you a link to the Ohio Police and Fire Games page, but to see who all actually can compete. It's not just police and fire. It's
right.
It's like relatives of, and
and if you had if you were a cop and your son's 18 and you don't train, he can do it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that can do it.
Yeah, there's much more openness because the one that was down here, it was like, no, you had to be able to show your badge, and it was very strict. Like you couldn't just show up. But
so I'm hoping for a good turnout. And then the following day, the 13th on Sunday morning, we're bringing Jay Wadsworth in for a LEO seminar. So
very cool.
And he's doing a super fight at the police and fire games too.
I think I saw that. Is he doing it with is it
Mark Farrell?
Yeah. Jay, actually, we were gonna have Jay come down and do a law enforcement thing at our place. We just never got around to get it organized.
Yeah, this will be the second time. He's a good dude. He knows his stuff.
Yeah, definitely does.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good, man. Awesome.
Yeah. I'm sure me and Dustin can talk for another 2 hours.
It's all good, man.
Yeah, I mean, if anything you want to talk about, we can talk about. You want to put the jiu-jitsu history, like I love video games. You want to talk about video games? We can do some video games. I wouldn't call myself a gamer, but I do like video games.
Yeah, I will say some of them early seminars that I was fortunate to come down to your place with George. Well, I wish I could go back, and like get the details that I'm sure I didn't get.
Yeah, I think just like anything else, we talked about our age, right? And so I think when you do jiu-jitsu long enough, you realize that you go to when you're new. I would say when you're young, even if you're 40, but when you're a white belt, you go to seminars and you get wowed by the wow moves, right? And that was awesome. That roll over the shoulder to omoplata was great. But as a black belt for like over 11 years now, I'm like, man, did you see his grip? That I wish I would have paid attention to more of. And I've become the adage of at black belts where you get to really learn. That's not lip service. Because you have an appreciation for the minutia of jiu-jitsu that you don't when you're coming up through the ranks. Because when you're coming up, you're drinking fire hose, right? And you're trying to absorb all this information, and you're trying to keep it and figure out what you need and what you don't, and what works well for you and what you don't. And you're constantly like squirrel, and you're looking all over the place, and you get sidetracked. But I think you eventually, when you get to black belt, and probably upper level brown, but definitely black belt, you have such a great appreciation for the nuance of even just shifting weight or grip or the setup. It's not the huge moves. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I was able to go to a seminar in 2007. It was the first Rickson Gracie seminar he had done in the United States that wasn't just for affiliates. Crazy, Chad. It was 250 people down in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm talking the whole thing sold out in like an hour.
Wow.
Man.
Hammonds calls me. He said, Dustin, Rickson's coming. If you got some students that want to come, it's going to sell out fast. Because Eric Silver, which was one of his original students, was getting his black belt, and Rickson was bringing everybody in and doing this mega seminar. And I remember going to Nashville. It was a 12-hour seminar, so it was 6 hours.
Wow.
Right. And I remember I was there with like Robin Giesler and a few other guys that really respected. Jim Kelly down in Cincinnati, super awesome guy. And I remember leaving that seminar thinking, someone asked me, how was it? Did he show? And I'm like, the only way I can explain it was like a master's class and the fundamentals of like applied physics and how you relate to jiu-jitsu. It was like balance stuff and grips and how you shift your weight. And I don't think, at least in my opinion, had I went to that seminar as like a new blue belt, I'd have been bored out of my mind. I wouldn't have appreciated what I was learning, right? And just like a few years after that, at my had Macio Stembowski, which if you're familiar with Neiman Gracie, who fights in Bellator, so Macio is his father.
Okay.
He's a red white belt. The guy is a wrist lock nightmare. So if you ever look at any of the really old Gracie pictures,
right,
like back in the 70s or now the show, if you look, you'll see this really tall guy. I mean, like 6'6", 6'7". That's Macio. He came up to Gracie's in their infancy. He's actually kind of credited for popularizing the triangle. That was his thing. Croyler Gracie. So you know Croyler, Chad?
Yes.
So it's Croyler's. That's who gave Croyler his black belt. He Croyler's dad's a black belt. It was Macio who he kind of is under, and it's his uncle. And so I'm good friends with Croyler. He's an awesome dude. But when Macio came to my school, I mean, I loved wrist locks before. You could wrist lock a person that many ways fast. and it was just it was just the details.
Yeah.
I've had Buchecha. We had Buchecha at a seminar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember a single thing Buchecha showed at that seminar.
Right.
I don't. It was so many moves that were very tailored to the 6'3" super athletic type.
Yeah.
That didn't speak to me, right? But you get to have someone who's, I think, a little bit older in the tooth, so to speak.
Yeah.
Have a way of teaching and sharing information that you're like, oh, that makes much more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've, getting my black belt and getting older, like we've talked, I'm very more selective on who I want to bring in for a seminar and what seminars I want to attend.
Yep.
Again, was a purple belt, man, I was going to every seminar I could get my hands on. I just wanted to get out there. And some were very good. Again, I was very, for lack of a better word, just because he wasn't in the seminar circuit. I think George is underrated unless you're in his circle or in his affiliation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
George is such a charismatic guy. And so when you're in his center, when you're in his presence, when you're in one of his classes, he could be teaching you how to tie his belt, but he does it with such passion.
Yeah.
But no one is ever going to tie you my belt better than George. No one gets that excited, right? Yeah. And so he does. He has a lot of. He views jiu-jitsu different. I think because he's in his mind, he's a fighter first.
Yeah.
I think, and so he, and that's one thing with like our team, SAS team, like our, Master Salzinho. He's definitely more of he's never been one to be a point guy. He's like, just met Salzinho. The only word he really said well in English was trauma. like rolling your partner in every position should be uncomfortable. Like that is kind of George's mentality, shoulder pressure, make them hurt, so it was it is a very, sometimes seminars are very unique. They can maybe to the untrained eye seem like, why are we doing the same move for 2 hours? Like I don't understand. Like, we had a seminar once at my school and it was an ankle lock. It was just a straight ankle, set up for a straight ankle lock. And he spent probably 99% of the time going in entrance of this ankle lock.
Yeah.
I hated it. I mean, it was just like, why did we do this for 2 hours? But then if you watch my students over the next like 3 months, they all got damn good at ankle locks.
Yeah, I bet.
No, they didn't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure,
so George does have a really good way of conveying some details. He pounds it into your head.
Yeah.
It'll be 20 moves, but it'll be 1 or 2 that'll stick with you. And you'll find a way for it to fit in your game. Because like you were saying, Chad, I think sometimes we look at, people ask me, man, you should have X. I don't know if it's Keenan or someone.
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
We could, but I think there's people out there that you'd have more value. You get more content that you're able to use. And that's not a knock on the Keenan or whatever. I mean, we had a couple, like a year or two, it was probably about 2 years ago, I had Gianni, when he was coming through, him and Aaron, I guess, were coming through cross country, driving from.
Right.
And I'd known Gianni since he was a little kid. I'd refereed him in Naga, like when he was like 10, 11 years old.
Right.
So when he came through, I was like, yeah, man, if you want to start my academy, no one in my school knows who Gianni was.
Right.
I had like 7 people, literally like 7 people at my school for a Gianni Grippo seminar. And it was like $30 or something. It was dirt cheap.
Right.
So you have that. I had Chris Morardi multiple times in my school because I've known Chris forever. And I think one time we had like 10 people.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like, I think it's tricky when you own a school and you're trying to host seminars because you're balancing out, do I lose the $3,000 that it cost me to bring this person in?
Right.
I selfishly want to learn from them, or do I bring in the person that is just going to show all kinds of shit and people are going to come and I selfishly might get 1 or 2 things out of it.
Right.
I mean, the seminar that blew my mind that sold out is when we had Kurt Osiander. It literally, and I told Kurt, I said, man, I know you don't like to fly. I said, but if you'd be willing to stay another day, we could sell this seminar out again. 85, and we sold out in like a week, and I probably had another like 50 people on the waiting list.
Wow.
Man.
And don't get me wrong, and Kurt showed some good stuff, Absolutely. He's a real cool ass dude, but I think more people were there because he's a cool guy.
Because he's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his jiu-jitsu just happens to be good.
Right.
But yeah, we have like the Macios of the world or someone, it's like, oh, yeah, I don't know who that is. So
yeah.
So I'm not coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to come. But
oh, jiu-jitsu has evolved too from that to like now, like you were saying earlier, like it's from old school to new school. So more people are tuning in, let's say, so to speak.
I think so. And I think people are eventually, we appreciate things when they're gone, right? Whatever those things.
Yeah, whatever they are, sure.
And I think what I am afraid of is that I hope we never get to a place in jiu-jitsu where an appreciation for the original reason why we have Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? For a pure self, like a
sure
defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I hope we as we continue to Americanize jiu-jitsu, even if we say we're not doing it, it's by nature.
It's happening.
It's happening, sure.
Right. So we need to make sure that there's enough of us out there that we're not trying to fall into the trap of just appeasing whatever the fads are, and we're sticking true to what they should be learning, right?
Yeah.
What we hope they're learning, what we're trying to teach them.
Staying true to the art itself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's, I mean, I can't say that I've noticed in Ohio, right? From my experience, we're very fortunate to have some instructors that have been teaching for a really long time, some really established teams and schools. And I mean, you're going to have flash in the pan academies that might show up, and they're more, not necessarily competition based, but maybe not as established. But for the most part, 99% of the schools, everybody's learning good jiu-jitsu. Like there's not like bad jiu-jitsu out there. You won't run across like I think if you're in bigger states, you might run across a purple belt or a brown belt. You're like, how the hell did I get a purple? Or like who did that? Right. I think in Ohio, you step on the mat with a purple belt, and they're from one of the academies here in Ohio. They're from it doesn't matter where they're from. One of the legitimate academies, you're going to know they're a purple belt. They're not going to sneak up on you.
Yeah.
And I think the good thing about Ohio is we're still kind of small. Our community's still small.
Sure.
We're having a conversation with Seth Daniels when Seth was wanting to bring Fight to Win to Ohio, and I helped out in the first few of them. I was like, he's like, Dustin, I don't understand. He's like, man, you guys don't have like shit. There's no black belts. There's no. And he's like, what do you mean? There's like 15 black belts in Ohio. He's like, man, in Denver, we have like just our team alone, like the Amal Easton, like it's a Henzo Gracie. The Denver Metroplex, I think just that team has like 100 black belts.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, man, I think what really kind of, from a competitor director's perspective, what really made Ohio jump off of the map was the Arnolds, right? And like, it had so much prestige to it in the early 2000s. And then my tournaments started popping up, and then some of my tournaments got really big. And it wasn't even at the size of some of my tournaments. It was the caliber of the super fights we were able to get.
Yeah.
When you get Gary Tonin at your tournament in Akron, people are like, man, who's this tournament? Who's this?
What is this? Yeah.
Right. And so I think the perception is that the jiu-jitsu community here is this massive, there's 500 member schools everywhere you look, and there's 35 black belts in every academy. And that's never been the case. And I think often organizations like Fight to Win will come to Ohio and realize, like, damn, that's not what I thought. There'd be way more belts there. IBJJF comes and they're like, hey, we're going to do a tournament in Cincinnati, and there's like 7 black belts to compete, and it's mainly white and blue belts that jump in the tournament, right?
Right.
And so I think because of the success of those early Arnold's events, and some of those are historical. I mean, if you want to go down a wormhole and really get an idea of the level of jiu-jitsu that you would sometimes early Gracie tournaments between 2000 and 2003, whether it was the Gracie Nationals in the fall or the Arnold Championships in March at the Arnolds. I mean, some of the most historic submission grappling pre-ADCC was happening in Columbus, Ohio. Like it's not even compared. In fact, the one year I helped out several years. I want to say it was 2002. I remember Helson's partner was this older gentleman named John Cooper, not the football Ohio State, but another guy named John Cooper. And John had always asked me to help out. And I remember he was like, Dustin, your job is to look at the applications for the pro division. I'm like, all right, cool. That's an awesome job. I'll vet those people who are coming in. And I'm looking, and I remember back then, MMA TV, the underground, was the best way to advertise jiu-jitsu because there was no Facebook or anything. And I happened to know the guys who started the underground, Carrick Jeunesse and those guys. And so I had a moderator account on the underground. So I was able to post like actual pictures and stuff. And I remember posting, I didn't put a name on it. I just put the roster from ADCC that year, and I put the roster from the Arnolds. And I asked everyone, which one's better? Like, which one would be more competitive? And it was like 5-1, the Arnolds. Like, that was the talent pool. I mean, you had Marcelo.
Man.
Had Hins. I mean, it was a who's who of the top guys in the world. Salo, Marcelo, Sanji, a bunch of Brazilians, I can't even remember their names now, that were competing. Yeah. Cristiano Marcelo. I mean, it was incredible, the level of competition that we were fortunate to just be able to sit matchside like this.
Yeah.
And have no idea, the infamous Pejapano, the Jeff Munson, Pejapano match and just all these crazy matches historically happened. They weren't on the West Coast. They weren't some big IBJJF. They were in Columbus at the convention center. Yeah. So. Yeah.
At 2 a.m. probably.
Oh man, you have no idea. I mean, I the opportunity I had to work on those events was awesome because it laid the groundwork for how I knew I didn't want to run my tournaments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It showed me exactly how not to run my tournament. And then it's actually how I met. So Dan Summer, who found the Ultimate Fighter, he's a black belt under Renzo Gracie and, or actually Ricardo Almeida, but he was at one of the Arnolds one year. And I'm setting up the venue or whatever, like on a Friday, and Dan had showed up, and I just happened to meet him. He's like, hey, man, I got nothing to do. And so he starts telling me about this organization called Naga. So this must have been in 03. And I was like, I've heard of it, but it's not around here. He goes, oh, man, they're coming and setting up a booth, like at the Arnolds. They're setting up a Naga booth to give people information about, which was smart for Kip. Kip's a genius business guy. He went to the biggest tournament on the Midwest and then set up a booth about his tournaments all over the country. And so Dan was like, oh man, you ought to meet Kip if you're good at, if you like this tournament stuff and reffing. Kip's a good dude. He'll let you come out and work for Naga and all this stuff. And so I ended up meeting Kip Kolar, and then that was kind of opened the doors. I got to travel all over and referee and go to all these Nagas. So really, between working the Arnolds and seeing what not to do, and then back then, Kip, his stuff was like a machine. I mean, we went to a tournament once. I mean, he had like 1,900 competitors, and he ran through them in a day.
Wow.
You know, whereas we went to a Gracie, one of Helson's tournaments once, and like Chad was saying, it might be like they tell you to get there at 9 a.m. Then they tell you your division might start at 6 p.m. And then at like 9:30, they say you're about to get started. And then at 11:30, you realize you have one person that's there. Like you only have one match. That was common. That wasn't an uncommon thing for you to wait 14, 16 hours and then find out you only had one match to begin with.
Yeah.
Man. Nah, no thank
crazy.
you.
No, those were crazy days. But here's the thing. When you have a monopoly on the tournament scene, there were no tournaments.
No, nothing.
The IBJJF back then, it was called like the CBJJF.
Yeah.
And they only ran one tournament in the United States annually. It was in Florida. It was the Pan Ams. They ran it in Florida with Masio Siamis. And back then it was very open. Like Gracie Baja ran these tournaments. And Masio was the main Gracie Baja guy down in Florida. And so really there was that tournament. There was the occasional Gracie tournament, Helson tournament that he'd run in Ohio. Kaiki had some tournaments out on the West Coast, South Bay, out in like San Diego and that kind of stuff. And really, you had some other standalones. You had Grappler's Quest and Naga. Yeah. And that was about it. So when if you wanted to compete, and Helson knew this too at the time, he was like, if you want to compete, you're just going to have to come and bend over and take it.
Yeah,
to you.
Yeah.
You know, and so eventually it kind of wore itself out, and that's why he didn't run it anymore. The Arnold's people kind of like, hey, we can't have these 2 a.m. jiu-jitsu matches.
No fun.
No, they're not fun. They're not fun. But I mean, my first real jiu-jitsu tournament ever was a Helson Gracie tournament. It was the first Gracie Nationals here in Columbus in 2000. And I remember I didn't grow up in martial arts. And my friend Brian Adderson, one of my best friends, we showed up. We're not affiliated with any team. We weren't really with George yet, kind of really. Showed up, and they tell everyone, they get on the loudspeaker and they say, okay, line up by your academy. It looks like a scene out of like Karate Kid. Like everyone's standing in their white gis, and there's just rows of people with all their different Gracie patches, because it's all Gracie students. And then Brian and I are just kind of standing in the back looking at each other like, I hope no one yells at us, because like we're clearly not a part of this club. We don't really know what's going on. But even then, I mean, so Sala was doing a super fight that day. Shaolin did a super fight against the judo instructor from Ohio Judo, a guy named Virgil.
Wow.
Pounds. Shaolin's like 150, Terry. If you don't know who Shaolin is, 150 pounds. But they call him Shaolin for a reason. I mean, he's like a ninja. So it didn't really matter. Yeah. Virgil was an awesome judo player, but not against Shaolin.
Not against Shaolin, yeah.
But I remember this tournament like it was yesterday, and that was 21 years ago. So
that's awesome, though, man. That's the kind of stuff that just never leaves you, though. Those are like great memories and great things that you always know and share. That's cool. I love to hear that stuff. It's awesome. So you got any buddies?
There's a YouTube video out there.
Ahead. What's that, Chad?
Go ahead, Chad.
I was just gonna say there's a YouTube video out there of Dustin interviewing me for a tournament, one of your tournaments, like a little commercial.
Oh, is it really? Yeah, I think I'm healthy on YouTube. I'm not out there very much.
I'm going to find this now.
Yeah, you're more likely to find my. I'll
have to find it and send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, I used to do a webcast with a ESPN radio guy down here, named Jordan. It was a pretty cool show, and there's some of those videos. It's called In the Cage or Inside the Cage or whatever. We'd go to some like UFCs and Strike Force, and we built this little stage at my academy, and it was pretty cool. We had these students come in from the media school, and yeah, it was pretty cool. We did it for about a year. But those are about the only videos of me. There might be one or two matches online, but that's about it. There's one in German.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was teaching a seminar in Germany, and my buddy teach some stuff, and then they translated it into German. So there's that one.
Who can say they have a translation of just a German?
My first black belt was from Germany, so we go over and see him a good amount.
Ah, that's cool. Very cool. Well, man, you got anybody you want to shout out or any sponsors or anything?
Nice.
You know what, man? I don't have any sponsors. I definitely, just appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to come on and talk. I love talking about jiu-jitsu. I love talking about the jiu-jitsu scene here in Ohio, and just having the opportunity anytime to just kind of share, my backstory, but just anybody that's passionate about jiu-jitsu, I can talk about jiu-jitsu. So the opportunity has been awesome. If I do want to say, I know this last year for many of our academies, was a challenging time. And like I said, obviously from our earlier discussion, my school and hopefully like many others have rebounded. But if I could give a shout out to anybody, it's definitely my jiu-jitsu family. When we closed down last year, it was very easy for our students to be like, hey, you're closed, you're not open, I'm sorry, we can't help you. And, that was not the case for us. Many of our students who could definitely supported our academy while they had the opportunity. And it made a huge difference in just kind of keeping the lights on and allowing us to be feasible when we could return. And so if I want to thank anybody, it's everybody that's, on my family at OCSA, and even some other students from other affiliates that just stepped in and were like, hey, Dustin, you're a good guy. We don't want to see your school, fall on hard times. So for everybody that's ever supported, our academy in any way, whether it's through seminars or our tournaments, I'm always greatly appreciative of every blessing that I've been given. So thank you.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Thanks for being with us too. We appreciate all of it and just hanging out. It's good to meeting you, man. Good talking to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's very cool. Hearing all the stories and all this youngness of Chad that I didn't.
The youngness.
I didn't think it existed.
None of this.
All right.
Yes. He's always been bald though.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I haven't seen a single picture of him ever with hair. I don't think.
So, there's lots of
some out there.
I used to have hair.
That's what happens when we get older. It's jujitsu.
Yeah,
It makes the hair fall out. I'm just kidding.
Well, that was my daughter. My daughter was born and I started losing my hair. So
Mine just turned gray and white.
But,
There's
that too.
So, yeah. All right, my brother. Well, hey, man, Dustin, we appreciate you very much. Thanks for everything you're doing, man. You keep up the great work, and we'll catch up soon. All right.
I appreciate it, Terry. Thank you, Chad. I'll see you, buddy.
Sure.
All right, brother. See ya.